I jumped in the shower because I was stinking, and I ate some food because I was hungry. I was stinking. I was hungry, and now we're going to air dry during this hour. Get some of the water out my beard, and I think it's interesting that I had that one video when I had first started, and I was super skinny, and now I'm starting to put on a little bit more weight. A lot of it went down here. You can't see. See, I cut this screen off right where you would see my little bit of gut. But also, there's some ways that you look skinnier. Like if I put my arms out forward, I look skinnier. But even then, my shoulders are really sunken in on that first video. So a month has put some more fucking meat back on my bones. I feel a lot better. My face even was more lines in my face. Just interesting stuff that you see. Interesting stuff that you see. Shaz, finish this fucking project already. Last couple of videos are just fucking Shaz ranting and raving about shit. Okay, fucking. Yeah, we're gonna do some of this and then we'll go on to the next doc. Thank you for not sleeping. January 19th, 2012. Cast, Shaz, occupier subway guy, large homeless man. Scene 1, New York City subway car, midnight. Shaz, tell me again why we're not... You know what? I'm not going to do the name titles. I'll just do different voices back and forth. Shaz will sound like our heroic... Yeah, it's only dialogue. I could do this. Tell me again. I was trying to think. Should it be serious? Should it be silly? Tell me again. That's why you can't think about this stuff too much, else you ruin it. You ruin the whole magic. Tell me again why we're not sleeping in the churches. Fuck the churches and their lists. You can go sleep in the churches if you want. I'm sleeping here on the subway. Have you ever slept on the subway before? You shouldn't go it alone, especially your first time. How complicated can it be to sleep on a moving train? This isn't a boxcar. We're not hobos. It's a public transit. We're occupiers. What could possibly go wrong? Razor blades. Razor what? Razor blades. They use razor blades to cut the straps from your bag or cut open your pockets while you sleep. People get robbed on the subway. I don't have anything of value to steal. The thief does not know that. Maybe I'll hang a sign around my neck. Already fucked over by the NYPDs. Nothing left. Or they can hit you. Why would they hit me? Some guy fresh out of Rikers sees fresh young meat on the subway. Thinks your clothes are fancy enough to hit you while you're sleeping and run off with your shit. What shit? I don't have anything of value. You're paranoid. I have a Sharpie for your sign. You want to go find some cardboard? I want to smoke. Let's get off here. Scene 2, Brooklyn Street, 2 a.m. Man, that building says it's 23 degrees. They call this balls in your throat weather. I noticed. What? What? I'm hungry. I'm going to ask that store if they plan on throwing food away anytime soon. Scene 3, Subway sandwich shop, 1:15 a.m. Hey, man, do you have any bread you're about to throw out? My friend and I are hungry. Subway guy. You can have that piece over there. Thanks. Do you want any cheese on that? What? Sure. Awesome. Veggies, whatever you want. Just no meat. Oh, hell yeah. Put everything on it then, and some pepperoncinis, and hook some of that chipotle sauce. Hey, can you toast that? No. Oh. Scene 4, New York City subway car, 2 a.m. Dude, that was the best free sandwich I ever had. I know. I'm getting pretty good at asking for free stuff. See, we live in a world of plenty. All you have to do is ask. Of course, you have to be willing to share. I kind of regret you being around. I could have had a whole sandwich. Yo, that's messed up. I'm just trying to survive. Actually, right now, I'm just trying to sleep. Hey, don't lay down like that. The cops will harass you. What cop? I'm just relaxing. I'm not going to sleep. Cut to a black screen with the text 2 hours later. It says, wakes up looking startled, quickly glances around subway car. Occupier across the car has been replaced by a large homeless man. And this is a large homeless man. Hey, did you see where my friend went? What did you say? My friend, white guy, he was sitting right, there. I ain't seen no one. Puts head back down, goes to sleep. Because you have to sleep sitting over. You lay down, they fucking arrest you. Scene 5, 60 Wall Street, late afternoon. Dude! What the hell happened to you? I thought you were robbed or jumped or eaten or something. I got arrested. Yeah, so this cop comes by and tells me I can't be laying down on the subway. I told you they'd fuck with you. You didn't tell me I'd get arrested. Damn. Yeah, I just got out and about a half hour ago. Damn. Yeah, I want. You want to go protest Obama? I hear he's fundraising up in Harlem. I would, man, but I'm hitting the church. I need a good night's sleep. Yeah. Scene. Who is an occupier? January 20th, 2012. One of the hardest things I've been trying to deal with since coming to NYC is how to work within this movement full time. My first day, I did what so many other people did on their first introduction to the community. I wandered around like a lost freshman on their first day of school before finally settling into homeroom. For Occupy Wall Street, our homeroom is Zuccotti. Our homeroom in Zuccotti was the think tank. From noon until 5 p.m., you can always find a group of people engaged in intense discussions just east of the kitchen. There was no set agenda or set group of people. As a new person, it was usually the most eclectic group you'll find. Filled with not only your Zuccotti types, but casual passerbys as well, and staffed by at least one facilitator. So there I was, 6 to 8 hours into my first occupied day, still with my hippie beard and my natty Caribbean locks. It was beautiful. They're fucking down to my shoulder. I look fucking good. It was nice. Girls would come up to me in the fucking Caribbean. They'd be like, "Oh, I love your hair. I love your hair. Your hair's so nice." And they'd be touching it. I'd be like, "Oh, your hair's so nice." And they'd be like, "Yes, your hair's so nice. Your hair's so nice. We love to touch it." This one girl, we meet a couple sometimes where the guy seems to be giving the girl free reign. "I love your hair. Your hair's so nice. I just love it." They weren't all Asian, just in this story for some reason. They all have that accent. "Your hair's so nice." And I'm looking at the guy like, dude, that's cool. Okay, your girl can touch my hair. But you know what it is. Couples especially. Sometimes people are lonely on vacation. They just want to like hang out and like, where's the party at? Fucking let's be friends. You seem cool. You find a cool person on vacation. It's like, all right, show me some local shit. They want to get off that beaten path thing. And all I'd have to do is go in front of the tourists and just shake my head. My locks would fucking come out, and then just like, that's my story. That's my memory. So there I was, 6 to 8 hours into my first Occupy day, still with my hippie beard and my natty Caribbean locks, taking part in my first C.T. Butler facilitated discussion. You didn't just speak your piece whenever you wanted, but you had to signal to the facilitator to be put on stack. This was a revolution, similar to how I imagine a barbarian would feel who first witnesses the use of eating utensils. What a concept. A general yet civilized discussion among strangers with topics that are actually developed as opposed to devolve into, yes, life sucks, or what can you do nihilism, which is what most adult discussions devolve into. We don't have, I've said enough. People talked as if they believed they could actually do something about how they felt. Now, that's true. When people come to these discussions, they come in the park and we talk, a lot of people, multiple people, it wasn't just me, it would be like, I feel revitalized, I feel energized, I feel like these conversations are going somewhere. We're doing something. From the media, they're like, yeah, fucking try, you don't have demands, it's fucking, it's stinky, you guys are funny, you're young college kids. But when you were there, we were energizing people with fucking civic engagement. That's one of the reasons why the Occupy story has to be told, is America might just be suffering from a lack of civics. That's as simple as it is. Engagement in our democratic process. And we were doing it outside in a public forum. That is what the threat was, maybe. That is what needed to be squashed. Disperse these people who dare speak freely amongst themselves about what's going on in the world outside the narratives, wild, free, fucking rapscallion narratives, outside the dominant structure. Yes, yes. This is a threat that must be dealt with the full force of the law. How many fucking cops did they send to bust up our peaceful assembly? A pox on you, Bloomberg and Obama and every other federal government who dare come across Occupy with such violence and such force. Uncalled for, unnecessary is what it was. A pox on you and yours. I'd spit on the computer if this was mine, but it's not, so I won't spit water at my father's computer. I need to finish this the fuck up, Shaz. Are you high, Shaz? Are you high? People talk as if they believe they could actually do something about how they felt. They talk like they had the power to change the world, or at least the will to try and imagine what that change could look like. After a couple timid attempts at participation, I finally worked up the courage to ask the group the question that was on my mind, totally off topic, of course. So, do you guys still need people? I mean to stay here? 'Cause I don't want to intrude if there's not enough space, but if you need people, I've been known to be people. I could be a person if you need a person. Just if you need people, I could be people. But I don't want to intrude. If there's no space for Shaz, not enough resources, I don't want to intrude. So just let me know, okay? I'll be sitting over here. Let me know if I could join your club. To this day, I'm the only person I know who asked to occupy Zuccotti Park. The answer was interesting, not a resounding yes from those in the discussion who lived in the park, but not a no either. More like a polite brush off, when you realize too late everyone's not going straight home after the school dance. Do we need people? Yeah, about that. Well, we have a lot of people. What are your options? Do we need people? It's complicated. Look around at other people. It's complicated. Not everybody makes it to the after party. I decided to go to a friend's house that night. I took a couple more days before I finally committed to staying in the park full time, and even then I never pitched a tent for 2 weeks until the illegal raid. I was either slept outside, sometimes without a sleeping bag, or walked the park in our de-escalation team. I didn't feel right contributing to our ever-growing crowding problem, even though during my stay our population grew at least 10%. I didn't come to Zuccotti just to pitch a tent or march or protest against corporate greed. I'm only realizing now that I came to create a better world. Shaz has found the religion of revolution, that all-encompassing, all-rationalizing force that I read so much of in my anarchist history. It's addictive, that whole zealotry of, we are going to change the world, you need to... That's why, before I went back into the fucking shit this year, I was like, let me work on my If not, you can't get rid of your ego, but institute a practice that lowers it, which I believe spirituality and psychedelics do. And a good relationship. I got 2 out of 3. I've held this hope inside like a wish. I didn't dare to speak out loud. My experiences here have been showing me how to voice that wish. It's a shared dream of the people I talk to, reaching out because they look lost or not sure where the after party is either. I talk to them in conversations that involve tears because I'm selfish. A passion inspires me, things that I discover I'm passionate about, and the passion that is revealed through the sincerity of others. Friday afternoon finds me sitting outside of a courtroom after my first hearing, the trial postponed to a future date. I'm talking to this guy next to me, a nice enough kid, too smart for his own good, who I know from my couple months bumming around the occupied office. He starts getting into how he can't wait until spring and for the dead weight to fall off the movement. And my halcyon sense of unity, being a tribe of occupiers processed in solidarity by corrupt systems, vanishes. Or rather, the full recollection comes back. Since my first blush with this movement, I sensed an exclusionary guardedness that has no place in a populist movement. Some of us were members of a community. Some of us were dead weight. The plight of the noble activist burden rears its swollen head once again. One of the hardest things I've been trying to deal with since coming to NYC is how to work within this movement full time. This has nothing to do with personal finances. Sure, I started this blog finally on January 9th as a quick fix to my cash problems, but buying a laptop with my working group money and expecting a couple posts and a donation button to pay for it all, but now it's 2 weeks later. Laptop's long since been returned. I damaged my credibility with our working group's membership, and I'm still broke. Here's a secret for you, Shaz. You're still broke now, too. Although I had money, and I gave it up voluntarily this time. I like to think voluntarily. I like to think that this is a willful walk through poverty, but there are those who consider otherwise. But these aren't. This is a very interesting part of my poverty walk, being at home and let my parents judge me so much. They're like, "Oh, you have nowhere else to go, this and that." I'm like, yeah, I guess so. I should keep my mouth shut. If that's why I came here, to get my correction and get my comeuppance and practice humility, you can't do that with your mouth open. That's the reason why I shouldn't bug them. I just irrationally hope for their perspective, but these are emotional arguments, and you don't discuss emotional art. You don't convince someone logically of an emotional argument. I have to show them good times or something. I don't know. It's okay to not know what to do, and it's okay to not know what to say. It doesn't mean that you have to say something, though. That's probably a lesson I should learn. Is that a lot of times I've been putting words in place of not knowing what to say. Maybe I should chill a little bit. We'll see. That's a lesson you learn through exhaustion, because it's exhausting to always feel like you have to say something, I guess. We will see if these words ring true within a year. These aren't hard things. These are good learning experiences. I never regret my foolish behavior because the fool receives the best education. Also, sometimes the most painful. The hardest thing, my largest challenge, is working with people who don't share my values. I'm coming to realize that OWS, as originally envisioned by myself, and as being rediscovered over the course of this so far 2-week attempt at introspection, is a place where you don't have to compromise your values. You step up to be worthy of them. At least that's what a movement means to me. Friday night finds me at Spokes Council listening to a proposal directed at excluding an admittedly, repeatedly disrupting member of our community. Regardless the opinions in the room, mostly positive, or the veracity of the claims against this person, were all silenced by a beautiful, silver-haired matriarch from OWS in Espanol, who rolls her wisdom with a heavy Latin inflection. We are dragging a whole world that we are trying to leave behind. That was in her voice. We are dragging a whole world that we are trying to leave behind. And for that brief moment, those of us in the room are lent a mirror. Scene. Providence and Pizza, January 21st, 2012. 5 days ago, I wrote a post about an emergency housing situation that someone notified me about. A friend of mine was worried that the church she was staying in was going to be shut down because of the theft of a high-value item. I ended the post with no word back that things were okay, but a feeling that everyone was going to be all right. Well, mine is a works-based faith, so I'm moving into that very same church to make sure everything works out. Perched atop a balcony overlooking a cavernous room, half a football field in size, is a big space to unpack your thoughts. Occupiers sleep among the pews below like wolves in a den. Some of these wolves have pissed on crosses. Some of these wolves have damaged church artwork. Someone stole the pastor's laptop. And some of the filthiest, mangiest of the pack stole the cover of the church's baptismal, dumping out the water in the process. Water that came from the River Jordan. Dun dun dun. A pack of animals. Or was it animal as in a lone wolf? I don't know, but I have noticed a change in my demeanor and writing over the past couple days. I'm out of my funk, or at least can see the light at the end of the cave. I've regained my faith. Throwing out these religious fucking concepts and words without realizing the weight. I read that History of God book after this, actually. I read that early on in my real estate days. Someone recommended it or some shit. I read a lot. I read a lot. Even when I was doing real estate, I read a lot. Which means I'm also back on the warpath. By the time I finally get to sleep, I realize I don't have a blanket. Luckily, the trusted Titan's blue duffel is packed with clothes, so I layer up and bed down for the night among the yakking wolves. Oh yeah, we had a great action yesterday. Occupy the courts. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people marching on City Hall. Only yelling and marching outside at this time of year isn't always best for your health. And now we have a church full of sick people. So I go to sleep to the smell of vomitus and the sounds of retching, huddled on the floor like an animal, wondering just what I've got myself into. They want protesters, but they don't want to deal with them when they're sick. This from a sniffling occupier standing with me outside of the Upper West Side church we're staying at. It's Saturday morning and it's snowing. There are competing holes growing in both my shoes, a pair of canvas slip-ons, ones I picked up from the donation pile back at the park. I make a brisk, light path to the downtown subway. It still amazes me that I lasted even 2 years in the Army the way I inherently despise authority figures. For example, I can't just walk into the public atrium at 60 Wall Street and clean up the miscellaneous garbage, food trays, bread bags, etc., that I know are the leftover clutter from the movement using the space as our unofficial meeting grounds. No, first I have to mess with the security guards. Who the fuck is in charge of cleaning up this place? I demand, walking up to a group. It looks like a shithole. That ain't our job, said one of them mutters, and I stare at him like he just got himself fired. Get me a fucking trash bag. It takes 15 minutes. Christ! And I storm off without waiting for a response, finding my own bags at the bottom of a trash bin across the atrium. Fuck him. If they're going to bullshit all morning in a filthy environment while they're getting paid, I'm going to improve the space for free. I might as well call them out. I glance across the room. One security guard is still looking for a trash bag. Oh, yeah. They actually, I fucked up them a little bit and they started looking for a trash. I shame them into being like, you guys get paid to fucking be a security guard here. That ain't my job. Well, fucking, you want to just stand around trash or you want to tidy it up and now you're getting paid to stand around places that don't smell like trash. Just fucking some common sense. Only do what is your minimum job. What type of fucking world are we going to have? Just do what requires, what needs to be done. Is somewhat more of a moral way to live. But then you get taken advantage of, I guess. Yeah, you can't do that. Then everyone's just going to take advantage of you. You're the guy who's working for free. There you go, man. Take some pride in ownership, but then you only feel embarrassed for being called out being lazy. You don't feel ownership of this place or the commons in general. You just feel comfort of an easy job with a reliable paycheck. I feel my socks are wet. That's the righteous man shall be provided for. I'm almost positive that's in the Bible somewhere. But then what about the self-righteous? Aren't they just begging for their comeuppance? Do we live in a world of plenty where my needs will be taken care of if my intentions are pure? Or do we live in a dog eat dog, wolf eat wolf kind of world? These are honest questions. That's why I went into real estate afterwards. I was like, fuck activism, fuck Karen, fuck shit. I'm going to get back to the politics. But for now, Shaz need to eat. Shaz need to eat. Right now, fucking what you do ain't put food on my plate. And Shaz need to eat. So I ate. Filet mignon. I ate and Shaz ate. And he ate some more. Oh, he ate. He had the appetite of 5 men. He ate. When Shaz eat, he eat. Sweet shit too. Juicy. He ate that juicy. And he ate that tight. And catching up on the Sisyphean task of daily blog posts and the JNR electronics, my faith is affirmed. A worker in the balcony cafe of the electronics store reminds me that the public computer terminals are for just 20 minutes of use. I've been there for a couple hours now. To be completely candid, I didn't need the reminder. I kind of knew I was abusing the system. Worse, I hadn't purchased anything. Zero cash economy man will blog for food not really working out yet. But then I overheard a couple seated behind me discussing Occupy Wall Street. My belief in Providence leapt into action. I couldn't help but overhear. Here's a copy I have of our declaration. Of course, I'd appreciate a coffee. Oh, thank you, ain't too sweet. Thank you. The worker scowls at me as I walk back to the computer terminal. He better believe his team member asks I'm going to milk this cup of coffee for at least a couple more hours. But trading pamphlets for coffees is not true providence. No, I need a bigger test. I have to encounter my proverbial angel to earn what Jacob earned when he was granted the name Israel. I have to wrestle my blessings from faith. See, look, all this Christian shit that's still in my head. Using their stories, using their parables and their metaphors, which becomes a part of your personality. But then why it's important for them doing this, I guess, is to cleanse my stories, cleanse my word. What is in my head? What do I believe in? What do I have to let go? What do I have to maybe correct? What are my blind spots which others will correct for me? But then didn't Israel come away from that struggle permanently crippled? The Israelites did a lot of fucked up shit. The scene is Papa John's Pizza in the financial district. I asked the manager earlier around 7 p.m. if he had any extra pies available. You see, I'm from Occupy. We have a GA going on right now. I worked for you guys a long time ago. I know sometimes there's some orders that aren't picked up. Pies lying around. He waved his hand in what I originally took as a I'll take care of you gesture, but I'm starting to realize was more of a fuck off kind of wave or gesture. It's approaching 8 p.m. I'm not leaving without my pizza. I'm willing this act of charity to happen. I don't ask again, and I don't smile. I sit patiently as the customers enter and exit. I get faked out by a small cheese I think is intended for me and grin, but it's back to business. I haven't eaten all day. It takes a better part of an hour to finally decide to send a small cheese my way. It's almost a Pyrrhic victory as I burn my tongue on the hot, greasy goodness in my haste. I imagine my victory speech. You own the companies, but they work for us if we're only brave enough to ask their help. I consider this gooey little disc my trophy. I imagine myself the proudest person boarding an uptown train that night. Thank you, scene. So it is what it is. Yeah, I just drank some milk too. I ate 5 eggs, a whole shitload of cheese, and some milk. That's why they call this a sloppy bulk. Yesterday I had 4 massive bean and cheese burritos. I'm just eating. Shaz just eating and eating while I can eat. We'll see. This last video I put in my head to be like, what the fuck are we doing? We're trying to sell those books by the end of the year. So we got to finish this. This is a part of the process. Occupy Kiss was interesting. I think I talked out a lot of emotions and memories during that. David transcripts. Here's more reading. I could do this in a half hour. We got this. The cool thing about this Shylock, let me try to read this note. The cool thing about this Shylock, I know what's going to happen. Just got to clear out your nose once and then you'll stop sniffling. Ugh, excuse me, that wasn't a fucking sneeze, that was a burp. The cool thing about this Shylock, the cool thing about this is Shylock is a trader, gets a trader in a bad position where he loans him money and the trader, his ship sink and he can't pay Shylock back. And back then there's anti-Semitism, so Shylock's a perfect villain because he's just pure Jewish evil bondsman. But he's also human because Shakespeare didn't write one-dimensional characters, so he had a lot of logic vested in them. So he's making his case for why he wants actually his bond or the plot. It develops that he accepts a pound of flesh instead of the bond. So now he's demanding that the guy give him a pound of flesh, and they're trying to talk him out of it. They're saying, Shylock, this makes no sense. And so he says, they're asking him for mercy, basically. For thy 3,000 ducats, here's 6. He says, I'll give you 6,000 ducats for your 3,000 that you loaned. And Shylock says, if every ducat in 6,000 were 6 parts, and every part a ducat, I would not draw them. Yeah, I would like my bond. He's very principled. He's like, I want the bond, so fulfillment of the obligation. So it's sort of like the unbending loan. Remember, I went and I saw this with Al Pacino and Shakespeare in the Park, so that's why it's in my head. I haven't read many of the classics, but I read some of The Merchant of Venice and Othello and a couple of them, Hamlet and shit. So yeah, well, I'll explain the backstory after I'm done. How shall thou hope for mercy, rendering none? They ask him. What judgment shall I dread, doing no wrong? He doesn't believe he's doing wrong. You have among you many a purchased slave, which, like your asses and your dogs and mules, you use in abject and slavish parts, because you bought them. Shall I say to you, let them be free? Marry them to your heirs? Why sweat they under burdens? Let their beds be made as soft as yours. Let their palates be seasoned by such viands. A viand is like something you season a palate with, apparently. You will answer, the slaves are ours. So do I answer, the pound of flesh which I demand of him is dearly bought. It is mine, and I will have it. If you deny me, fie upon your law. There's no force in the decrees of Venice. I stand for judgment. Answer, shall I have it? That's the whole idea of the letter of the law and the spirit of law. And I think it perfectly illustrates some arguments I get into with people in Occupy Wall Street. There's one guy in particular who manages a lot of resources, MetroCards, housing, and he's like, he turned me away from churches. He turned a pregnant woman away from a church. This is that Jeff motherfucker. Because we were housing people because he's like, she's not on the list. And we're like, well, there's rules, and then there's the spirit behind the rules, man. Let's just show compassion. And he told me once, you can't get a MetroCard. You're not on the list. And I'm like, dude, you know me. You see me working all the time. You know me since December. He's like, if I just, Shaz, if I give this to you, then I'm no better than George Bush and these other crony politicians who help their friends. And I'm like, no, that's not what's wrong with society. We don't need better followers of rules and regulations, although we could do with ending some of this cronyism, but we actually need better values. We need more human structures. Maybe we don't even need institutions. It's like the little anarchist. I'm starting to be like, no, there's something to this anti-bureaucracy. The libertarian anarchist fucking extremes have some of the shit they talk about, like the corruption of the modern age, is dead on. We don't need stricter rules and regulations. That's sort of an ideological split. And so he's sort of like that guy saying, I'm completely within my rights and the law. You have your slaves, you own your property. I made a contract with this guy. He owns me a pound of flesh. And that's what Shakespeare, and that's what artists does, brings in humanity and says, well, there's rules and logic and there's rhetoric and then there's compassion. And in the end, he is. A lot of times in this movement, I ask people, I understand what we're doing. We're trying to set up a system. We're trying to be logical. And process is big. We're just talking about process, setting up a process by which we can be more inclusive. The Occupy movement, but we'll always have to have compassion. This is a rule that you see in online forums. Remember, there's a human being behind the other computer screen. Let us not lose our civility. We have to have people before processes, is what I tell people. It's just like a phrase. It's just a phrase. When you come to a point where you have a person on one side and you have a process on the other side, I would imagine you always want to break the process for the sake of the person. It's a little bit dangerous, Shaz. I don't know. It's case by case basis. Come on. Let's not be crazy. There's a process for a reason, because this can lend itself to manipulation as well. A lot of people don't do that, and that's when you start to objectify people, and because that's when you come up with an excuse not to see the person. You have your rules, your regulations. You blame the victim. You say, well, they should have known better. They shouldn't have put themselves in that position. All these different reasons not to be compassionate. When I think what we were imagining in the park, and what a lot of people came out and tried to change, a lot of people came out to try to change in the world. It sounds really, really idealistic, because we live in what seems to be an uncaring world, where we don't really care about people, where we see people falling by the wayside. Like I tell people, Wall Street and society out there has a monopoly on all the smartest people, all the most rational, all the intelligentsia, all the most complicated systems. We're not going to fight that with smarter, more efficient systems. They have the efficiency in society. What we are bringing to the table was heart, compassion, a different style of communication. And that's what direct democracy was. A consensus process is people governing themselves, people actually listening to each other and joining each other in self-governance at the lowest level. Just coming together in a park, in a public place, and taking part in discussion, and then making that decisions, including everyone's opinion in that discussion. You have a proposal, you no longer own that proposal. C.T. Butler's book, he talks about that. You're supposed to check the ego at the door. This is a model that we actually started following in Occupy Wall Street. We don't train up to it enough. This guy had a training in Long Island. Not that many people went. He's having a second one here in New York this weekend. Not that many people are going, because they care about efficiency. They care about doing stuff. But really, the perspective I've been earning is our most valuable accomplishment was the new communication we were bringing to activism that anarchists have been using for a while now, and other activist organizations, but we are actually bringing it to the mainstream. This is consensus process, that you can actually have complexity built upon direct democracy, completely challenges our representative democracy. And that would be like an anarchist tactic, that you have a democratic deficit, which are local municipalities that don't seem well, or our whole political structure doesn't seem like it's inclusive. It doesn't seem like it's representing us. It doesn't seem like we have a voice in it. Corporations are drowning us out. It's destroying the environment. It's destroying our economy. Whether you criticize capitalism or not, you can just acknowledge the effect of it. It seems like things aren't working. And so in that discussion, we've inserted the consensus process and direct democracy. And that's an anarchist idea. You create a model which delegitimizes power structures, and you embody your alternatives, your values. And that's what coming to a public place, coming to a park was all about. That's what I'm starting to view this Occupy theory as all being about. The smallest thing that we did was the most important thing that we did, which was coming together in a public place and having a discussion in a direct democratic fashion. Start organizing ourselves along these tactics. And then out of that, we built complexity, where we're talking about actions. We're talking about protests and stuff. But we haven't really done that right. We haven't really spent enough time learning these tools of communication and improving ourselves. That's what the book was all about, Occupy Kiss. That's why I say wipe the lipstick off the pig. You got to let it go, Shaz. We need a new brand. That brand wasn't working. It's a good, interesting brand, but it wasn't working. I like the new book. The new book is a good book idea. Someday we'll finish the new book. In a lot of ways, what we were doing was very simple, and it was left incomplete from the beginning. We have to go back and really spend a lot of time and energy working on those communication tools that we started off with. It's also an anarchist idea that in order to change society, you have to change the very bonds of that society. That's the social relationships in that society. That's something that Leo Tolstoy says, that everyone wants to change humanity, but not many people want to change themselves, change human beings. So that's the self-reflection. We're having a lot more effort projecting our criticisms on an external society and not that much effort looking inwards, trying to change ourselves. When really we're not removed from that society. We're all a part of that society. Like my Spanish friend said in the last post, we're dragging a whole world. We are trying to leave a whole world behind us that we are dragging into the new, however she put it. And external critique has to include internal critique. That's where art comes in. I think art holds up a mirror. So that's where my work and other people who are having interesting discussions are trying to hold up that mirror to Occupy Wall Street. So that way, if we are replicating these structures and bringing this baggage from the old ugly society into the new space that we're creating, this opportunity that we've given ourselves to have this discussion, we can recognize it and we can start working on it. I mean, this is a conversation that's been going on throughout history. The Merchant of Venice, and I summarized it as objectification. When you don't see that other person, you don't see that other individual who deserves human dignity. You just see an object. You see lumber instead of trees. You see a black person or a racial epithet instead of a person. That's where that's where the anti-Semitism, anti-Arabism, anti-communism, anti-whatever, it's just an excuse to objectify the other person. And the counter to that would be love. And so more loving relationships and more healthy communications. It's a real simple thing to say that this whole Occupy movement was about creating alternative ways to communicate or healthier communication patterns in society at the very basic social level. Thinking about now after this whole year of reflecting on my life and checking in on my friends and family, I come back to that. I was speaking above my pay grade back then. I was just guessing. I was like, it must be about this, because I was sprinting towards the truth knowing I was running out of time. I stopped that blog, and now this is the last day before I left the movement. I hired a guy to follow me around and record me while I had conversations. Luckily, I went over those recordings last December when I decided to take 2018 off to figure out what the fuck I'm doing with my life and get back on course and follow my breadcrumbs back to my idealistic self, away from the real estate bullshit, which was interesting. Not to knock it. It was an interesting thing to do. I might do it again as a part-time hobby. But yeah, I was on one. Like, the truth don't change. If you read something from back in the day and still rings true, then you're on something. Healthier communication patterns in society at the very basic social level. That would change the world for the better. That makes a lot more sense to me. It seems like a lot easier thing to promote. Upon that, maybe we can build the complexity of actions and everything. But if we forget that little kernel, that everything, it seems like that you do and build upon that is going to be useless, because you're just a protest movement. At the very end, you're just petitioning power. Because these power structures are built upon a different type of relationship of you vesting someone else with your democratic authority. This is why the anarchists is. I'm reading the anarchist theory now about when they broke with the Marxists and broke with the other socialists, and it was all this stuff. Is that those people who are very suspicious of authority from the very beginning sort of call out these patterns that you get caught up in, and they called out a lot of the 20th century patterns of socialism and corruption and authority. Although there was also antagonism from without, but it became a false dichotomy between socialism and capitalism, when really it seems like the historic discussion is between individuality and fucking bureaucracy, between authority and anti-authoritarianism. And capitalism, when it's practiced with an authoritarian bent, is fascism. Socialism, when it's practiced with an authoritarian bent, is state-run communism. The concentration of authority and power seem to be the cancer in human societies. And then ideologies are just the trappings of, like, just let the ideas compete scientifically in the public forum of discussion. But then fear, but that idea is too dangerous to allow it just to run freely. And now danger is the reason for security, and security is the reason for vesting authority in a concentration. And now you have perpetual war. Congratulations. You just played yourself, America. You're vesting representatives, representative democracy. You're vesting the owners of capital. You're not really questioning the power structures of your economy. And you're vesting organizers of the movement, because you're not really a part of the organization, because the movement has lost its direction. the movement has lost its direct democratic push. So I was recognizing what was like actually revolutionary and fucking worth keeping out of this Occupy movement. And then I was like, my pits are getting a little sweaty. All this talking is getting me a little worked up. And that's what we'll see later on. I mean, we'll talk to other people and ask them stuff and Occupy Wall Street, but that's where the elitism comes in. And that's from the very beginning I noticed that there was this push to like, and the people I know, they might have had the best of intentions to sort of direct this movement, steer it, control it. And that's another 15 minutes we got it. That's another anarchist principle. If the means aren't in alignment with the ends, if how you're creating the revolution isn't with revolutionary tactics, then you're just going to mirror the power structure. You're just going to replicate the society that you're criticizing. We're dragging a whole lot of old world into the new. So if we don't create the movement through direct democracy, through consensus, it doesn't matter how efficient we are at protesting, like May Day, all these other actions, because in the end, we're just going to create bureaucratic systems. And that's what sort of some people notice. How do you not? It's really hard that's what a lot of movements have gone through. How do you not create a movement of bureaucracy and elitism? It's really interesting because I'm reading like the 18th century version of this, or the 19th century, 1800s, as this is what the fucking utopian idealists when socialism came out. And they're like, all right, well, we have private capital concentrated in very few hands. Maybe we should have some of that or all of it controlled by the public in the social sphere. And we should protect the commons and other just crimes against nature and crimes against society people were recognizing. And then there became ideologies to defend these things. And and then as people started linking up around these ideologies, they started to wonder, well, how can we move towards a better society without creating an elite bureaucracy, which is just going to fucking be worse than our previous, create new masters worse than the old, or in the model of the old. But that's the most important question we should be talking about. That's the discussion we should be having, and that's the void that we're stepping into here. I mean, I just summarized the top points that we're going to talk to Homeboy about. We were waiting for someone in a coffee shop, and he was filming me, so I was just like, coffee Shaz, like I am today. Coffee Shaz, yes, talk. Connecting all the fucking thoughts in my brain. He has some interesting views because he thinks that we can work with some of the money people and with some of the organizers without being completely co-opted. And we'll talk about that. I'm pretty hard stance. I'm like, I can't work with that type of ideology unless it's good from the ground up, completely inclusive. But then you can't be perfect, you know. You can't have total inclusivity. So the truth lies somewhere in between, I think. Yeah, I've been wearing these clothes for like a week and a half. That's what you do when you're occupying. You become a cartoon character. You have one outfit and you wear it every single day. Eventually that outfit just reeks and you either wash it or a lot of times you have to throw it away because it's unsalvageable, and then you go and you find a new outfit. And so I look like some sort of banker or maybe a middle manager. My next outfit might be a street person. I think I have pictures of the videos. I took screenshots of the videos at least so you could see me talking. Even if fucking YouTube, those are some of the videos that YouTube is holding hostage from me. It's sad because I don't know if I have any backups on those fucking videos. So those might be, might be my only, I care more about the California ones because that was me and Shaw. But guess where I found these shoes? Lower East Side. It was actually the East Village. I just didn't understand Manhattan geography back then. But now I'm very particular about, this is north of Houston. It's not technically Soho because Soho stands for south of Houston. You can't really call it Soho. Isn't that fucking sweet? They look nice. I mean, you can tell they have holes in them. You can tell, like, Lower East Side is a great place to find clothes. A lot of people over there, like old hippies, have just talking out my ass here. They have come up in the world and still live there because they like the culture and like the history. They still put I talk to a lot of people, find good stuff there. So, like, this is just free fucking just speaking. So, yeah, I'm speaking about shit I don't know right now. So, like, if they wear something else that's fancy, like, these are expensive shoes, you know, they put them on the sidewalk, you know, people, because St. Mark's is around there. It's East Village, it's not the fucking Lower East Side, Shaz. St. Mark's is in the East Village. There's some crusty people who come through there, so they know, like, their privilege isn't shared by the entire community. It's one of the hippiest rich communities. And what the fuck am I talking about? Like, they talk about gentrification. A lot of these communities, you have a lot of the money, you need a lot of money to live in. Like, anywhere on the Lower East Side, you know, $2,000 for a tiny little studio or something. Like, later on I learned this shit. Now I'm just fucking guessing. At the time, some of them are still, even though they have money, they're holding it down. This guy who gave me these shoes. Or maybe they actually belonged to someone. They were on someone's car. I was like, hey, I looked around. I was like, hey, I'm taking these shoes. And I just walked off. I might have stolen someone's shoes. All right. Anarchy. Leo Tolstoy. This will be good, actually. This is when you actually start looking into the actual text and people who talk about anarchism, then you're like, oh, okay. I don't like ideology, and really, I think there's something beyond anarchy. I think permaculture, that's what I was getting into in my writing, is that anarchists are really trying to get back to the farming community, back to like, anarchists are without rulers, anti-statist, so basically what happened before the state, and anarchy is a revolution against the state, against rulers. Within that concept, there is a revolution for, and that's when you get to like farming and permaculture and communes, and communism is supposed to push us towards communes. In my Shaz brain, I'm connecting the dots that now when I'm reading anarchism, I'm like, oh, I was onto something. Intuitively is pretty much how it developed. And the nice thing about anarchists is that they don't try to get into that conversation. They just say, let's empower people to create those solutions for themselves, which is sort of humble. That's why I like them. When everyone else was bugging me, the anarchists were fucking like the humblest out of everyone. Because you can't be an anarchist and you can't be a proselytizer. That's like, those are like obvious hypocrites. And like the Zen Buddhists, it's like, I like the people who first and foremost say, well, let's keep the ego in check as we proceed. It's nice because you don't get into a bunch of hubris, but I think that's included in this discussion. A mature discussion about anarchism, you would talk about permaculture, just the same way you have a garden where you limit your actions so you're not constantly treating the symptoms of your missteps, but you try to get it as natural as possible, which goes into the natural expression of anarchism societies, which was Kropotkin. So I found some really cool intellectual backing to these insights I was getting. This is all coming from Fukuoka. A One Straw Revolution that I just read while I was Occupy was like a fertile fucking cross pollination of ideas and the people we would talk to. That's why we need these things. We need another one as soon as possible. Get people out there talking to each other. Share what's your blind spots, what's your beliefs, what's my beliefs. So we could do that without fucking killing each other. Then the world's improving. Literally, it's just out of that comes stuff. I know it. I can just sense it. And babies too, and fucking like and art and other shit too. That's an anarchist idea that we don't need coercion. We don't need institutions. As little intervention as possible to create a thriving human society. So I think anarchy and farming go hand in hand. Those are ideas I was working on recently because since being in Occupy, I ran across ideas of anarchism and really cool anarchists. I ran across ideas of permaculture, really cool permaculturalists and farmers. Actually, we were working to get Occupy Farms. I was like the founding member of that. We got a 56-acre farm. People were going to donate to us. Right now we have 20 farms in our community, in our network. I was watching from a distance, seeing what they were doing. It's become huge. We're probably going to be blow up bigger than woofing and everything. If you know about that, it's like an organic type. That's what I thought. This is a momentum we felt we had. It's like an organic type of, I don't even know, I've never done it. I'm getting caught to speed on all this stuff. You basically get into this network. You could go farm and work like over the summer or something. I've heard good and bad experiences about it. Sometimes they could be like rip-offs, people just getting you for free labor. But with Occupy, that's a cool thing. We came here is so many resources, so many cool people and cool ideas, just like a breeding ground, like a petri dish of activism. So like I meet someone who's like, hey, you guys should have an event up at our farm. And I start talking to them and they're like, hey, we'll give the movement our farm. And we bring, within a couple weeks, 17 people up there. We smoke a bunch of cigarettes, drink some beers, talk and hang out, camp out. And just imagine we can have like, it was up in the Woodstock area. Like we can have an Occupy Farms in Woodstock. Now we have people in Vermont. We have people all over. And that's like occupying the food supply, food justice. Get out the middleman. You don't need corporations growing your food. Send it to the city. So there's a lot of logistics involved, a lot of planning. But these types of ideas these are the types of big ideas that the small idea of Occupy is creating. So this still might be true. It's just like, it might be a little more complicated than I was letting on. But it was potential. How far off that potential how long it would take to fucking do something out of that potential. Like this is real shit that was happening and real ideas that we had. Like, oh my gosh, we're going to have like a fucking sustainable, but if I'd stayed in it, and also that's why the values and the culture is so important. It gets you through the hard times. We didn't have strong enough values and culture as an identity. I'm sure there's still groups called Occupy out there doing shit. There might even be still like an Occupy Farms group. Not all of the fucking detritus of Occupy died off. Some of it took root and held. Some of those Facebook groups and other stuff is still going strong. A lot of it was taken over by identity politics, though, which is by the end of this I get to, but I'm not going to talk about it now. But they fractioned us off to identities that they could control. Which people, who's they? We'll get into that too. Which people would talk about. It was a convergence. It was all these ideas and activism under the pressure of a system which is becoming more and more coercive. People came together and created this convergence. Occupy Farms is one of those cool things, and it's where a lot of it's coming back, I'm realizing, where anarchism is helping me get perspective on this. So I tell people it's not that you have to be an anarchist or I'm an anarchist, but that's the direction I'm headed, so I might as well acknowledge it. And going through anarchism and seek this wisdom and this perspective. And then that's our job as a generation. That's what Noam Chomsky said. Someone asked him in an Inter-Occupy interview. We had Inter-Occupy interviews. They said, Chomsky, how do we get rid of the stigma attached to anarchists? Because I think he identifies himself as an anarcho-syndicalist, that you should have worker collectives that own the means of production. We don't need a state or like bigger institutions, administrative institutions. And so they say, how can you get rid of the stigma of anarchism? Can you give us some advice? And he said, that's up for you guys to decide. It's your generation. You have to reimagine, reinterpret these ideas. And I think that's the way to do it, through these convergences, these like that Occupy was. Anarchism isn't violent craziness. It has two definitions in the dictionary. It's not just chaos and lack of stability or order. It's actually just the ideal that human beings can assemble themselves without coercion, voluntarily assemble, and self-govern. This is Leo Tolstoy. He's saying on anarchy, he says, the anarchists are right in everything. This is written in 1900. The negation of the existing order and the assertion that without authority, there could not be worse violence than that of authority under existing conditions. They're mistaken only in thinking that anarchy can be instituted by violent revolution. So Leo Tolstoy obviously was a pacifist. But it will be instituted only by there being more and more people who do not require the protection of governmental power, and by there being more and more people who will be ashamed of applying this power. A little bit of shame to the NYPD might be good. And I'm finding that idea came from like the history of anarchism, and like Proudhon was like, you have to opt out of society. We have to get out of this bullshit culture and let it die a war of attrition. I think, from what I gather. I need to read my Proudhon. The capitalistic organization will pass into the hands of the workers, and then will be no more oppression of these workers and no unequal distribution of earnings. That's Marxist. But I'm not sure if my ascriptions of him are correct. But who will establish the workers? Who will administer them? That's anarchist. It will go on its own accord. The workmen will arrange everything. That's Marxist. I'm just going back and forth. But the capitalistic organization was established just because for every practical affair, there is need for administrators furnished with power. If there be work, there will be leadership, administrators with power. And when there is power, there will be abuse of it, the very thing against which you are now striving. So anarchists brought up that if there's work, there'll always be administrators and there'll always be power to be abused. To the question, how to be without a state, without courts, without armies, and so on, an answer cannot be given because the question is badly formulated. Now this is Tolstoy again. The problem is not how to arrange a state after the pattern of today, or after a new pattern. Neither I nor any of us is appointed to settle that question. So that's nice. This is humility of anarchism. This is saying you can criticize it, but we're just trying to create an open space for discussion. Though voluntarily, yet inevitably, we must answer this question: how shall I act faced with a problem which ever arises before me? Am I to submit my conscience to the acts taking place around me? Am I to proclaim myself in agreement with the government which hangs erring men, sends soldiers to murder, demoralizes nations with opium and spirits, and so on? Or am I to submit my actions to conscience, i.e. not participate in government, the actions of which are contrary to reason? What would be the outcome of this? What kind of government would there be? Of all the things, I know nothing. Not that I don't wish to know, but that I cannot. I only know that nothing evil can result from my following the higher guidance of wisdom and love, or wise love, which is implanted in me, just as nothing evil comes from the bee following the instinct implanted in her, and flying out of the hive with the swarm, we should say, to ruin. But I repeat, I do not wish to and cannot judge about this. Let's see how long this is. Pretty long. He's talking about Christ. This is Christian anarchism, they call it. So he's talking about love and wisdom, blah, blah, blah. We'll cut through all this. Here we go. Right to the ending conclusion right here. To use violence is impossible. It would only cause reaction. To join the ranks of government is also impossible. One would only become its instrument. One course, therefore, remains. Fight the government by means of thought, speech, action, life, neither yielding to government nor joining its ranks and thereby increasing its power. This alone is needed, will certainly be successful, and this is the will of God, the teaching of Christ. There can only be one permanent revolution, a moral one, the regeneration of the inner man. How is this revolution to take place? Nobody knows how it will take place in humanity, but every man feels it clearly in himself. And yet in our world, everybody thinks of changing humanity, and nobody thinks of changing himself. And that's the whole idea, is that it's easy to criticize and project and harder to, hey, what's up, man? You came out, we were just reading Leo, boom. The fucking video cuts out. Perfect timing. Right as soon as I wrapped up Leo Tolstoy. So Shaz, how are you embodying and living this? This whole year was about seeing who Shaz is and making sure that he's on a course correction before then I apply that same wisdom to other people and to society at large. So if I err, tell me but where. I invite correction. But the flip side of that is I'm going to be doling a whole lot of correction out.